we have to lower the barrier to entry, niche the approach so they can find their customer base to grow into somebody that can actually take advantage of the robustness of the channel. And right now they're forced to enter at the top level and try to pay the entry fees of big organizations before they have the customer.
Welcome everyone to the Channel 2.0 podcast. I am your host, Eric Brooker. I am joined by my co-host, my good friend, and the co-founder of the Channel Advisors, Cameron Olson. Here on the Channel 2.0 podcast, we dive into all things channel. Channel 2.0 has arrived. It is time to elevate the industry together. Speaking of elevating, let's elevate this conversation. Let's elevate this podcast. Today, our guest is Roger Blom. Roger has ridden the bikes at the Google campus. He has eaten the world's greatest sandwich and is the godfather of dad jokes and one of the world's greatest storyteller. Roger's resume in this industry spans decades. Roger, that makes you sound really old. From Telarus and PPT, and now he is the CRO of Caliber Holdings. Roger, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. One of my favorite things is my cutout, the small Roger behind me on the shelf above me that Brooker takes full blame for, but it is there, still living live and well from another fun experience with you two. But okay, so thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you letting me steal your selfies with Roger videos. It's amazing. Have a great time trying to collect as many selfies as I can as we go through this wedding season. We've been to all 5 TSD national events, and the biggest question I get while I'm at these national events and I'm taking selfies, the first question people ask me is, "What is Roger up to these days?" Roger. Let everybody know, what are you up to these days?
We proved for years that people would watch my ugly face for 6.5 minutes to see a glimpse of themselves that they could simply see in a mirror. But it was important for you to take that over. We needed a much prettier face. Nobody wanted to look at me anymore. So we have obviously upgraded that experience for everyone as they watch those selfies. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm working at Caliber Holdings, which is a platform company focused on enterprise sales, mostly Fortune 1000 and above. And it has really expanded my view of how the channel thinks about the world and maybe some of their shortcomings and some of the ways we're addressing some of the shortcomings. So I'm having a blast. I'm having a great time.
Talk to us a little bit about your background. I mean, those of us that have been doing this for a long time, we all know Roger Blom. There are a lot of people that have gotten in the channel in the last couple of years, and you've really been head down focusing on building this platform. So give us your background. How did you get into the industry?
So, not to go too far back, I started my career as a network engineer. Used to be smart enough to actually do stuff. That went away quickly. I've run VARs and MSPs. I've sold a couple of those companies. I started a little software company that was a network monitoring, network management, call accounting company. To fast forward, that company was purchased by Telarus in 2009 or 10, somewhere in that range. Maybe a little bit later. As I joined Telarus, I'd never heard of the channel. I'd never understood what it was. And so I spent about 5.5 years at Telarus as their vice president of strategy, understanding how to grow a TSD and move through that. So most of my career in the channel has been at Telarus. When I decided to move on from there, I wanted to see what big enterprises could do. I joined a group called PPT, which was a contact center consulting group that had added channel features to it, but I liked the consulting and the practice. They were later purchased by Bridgepoint, and they become part of that. They become part of that family. But as I did that, we launched sales enablement programs at all the major TSDs, where we were going in and saying, "Look, you don't have to be an expert at contact center to go sell huge contact centers," and we enabled it for partners to partner up with that expertise and go do that. And so as I was looking around, I was intrigued by the enterprise sale and the lack of enterprise participation by the channel. I know the channel thinks they're in the enterprise, but the fact of the matter is the closest many of them have ever gotten is a Star Trek convention, right? That's the closest they'll ever be to an enterprise. That's the only place they ever understood it because it's such a different sales cycle. And so I joined at the time Caliber Solutions, which was a large agency selling into enterprise space, and we were able to build out this platform to address some areas of concern that we believe the top 3 to 5% of the agent market had, which was they were being underserved by the current environment, both from suppliers, from TSDs, and from the approach. And while I believe that the current TSD model is powerful and drives business and is growing and robust, there's a tier of agents that need some different services that want to play in an enterprise space. And so that was the catalyst of Caliber Holdings, was what does this platform look like to go sell into this enterprise and, again, enable other partners to take advantage of playbooks that lets them punch out of their weight class, for lack of a better term. And we've had a great time doing it. We've had some amazing success in the first 2 years as we've gone through this, and we've spent a lot of time building out some things and evolving, and I'm thrilled to talk about it today.
So you mentioned that the channel isn't quite in the enterprise space, and at my time at Telarus, we saw a huge, significant increase in the deals over 100,000 or 200,000 increase, year over year. You joined Telarus in 2016, so what, 8 years ago, a little over 8 years ago. What are the biggest changes you see in the channel from when you started to where it is today?
Number one is it's much more of a machine commodity driven function. When I joined Telarus, they had actually just gone through an experiment with a gentleman named, I won't say his name, never mind, but a president who saw the chance to turn Telarus into a machine. He looked at a production line and he had tried to move that forward. And the problem was the agents weren't ready. They didn't understand why they couldn't be just a relationship game, and they wanted to be productized. And he actually struggled to do that. What I see when he laid out his plan that I heard, I actually had him come present at one of my conferences because I liked the story so much. It was this room 1, room 2 presentation, and it went over terribly. Nobody liked it, but I did. But what's happened is most of what he predicted has come true. It's become much more about they're more willing to consider offshoring or nearshoring. They're more willing to consider handoffs between groups instead of having a dedicated supplier. So I think that's one change. The other change, I think, is the validity of the model. I actually have old slides from back then where I had to explain to customers how we got paid and how it wasn't illegal, which is funny because I'm in enterprises today, and I built a new slide on how we get paid to prove that it isn't illegal. Like, enterprises don't understand agents often today. There's many enterprises that don't get how that works. So number two is I think we've validated the model. I think private equity coming in has validated some of that. I think banks understand it. I think it's gone from having suppliers be a little bit overvalued. You remember the UCAS and CCAS days where they got ridiculous multiples as they grew their SaaS, to now I believe we're in that place for the TSD models. And so I think that's some of it. I think it's become less personal, which I think is a flaw. I think it's become less customizable. I don't get to pick and choose the services I use. It's much more of a commodity or machine driven piece. But I actually think it's a stronger model because they can they can be held accountable to that. But the last thing I'll mention, I think they've had a more difficult time recently validating their value of an indirect channel, and they're fighting the idea that they provide as much value as their multiple implies. And I think that's what we're running into a little bit is we have to do more as an organization to present our value and prove that we're helping as individual advisors or suppliers or whatever that is than we have been in the past, where we kind of fade in the background and get forgotten, except for every 3 years when we need a new Verizon circuit or Comcast circuit or Meta circuit, whatever you want to do. So I don't know if that's the question we're looking for, but I think that's really some of the changes we're seeing happen.
It's interesting to me because one of the things that Cameron and I experience pretty regularly is suppliers in the channel. They know the channel. They just want to improve what they're doing. We can have those conversations. But a good chunk of our business is new folks that have heard of the channel and they say, Eric, Cameron, we want in the channel. And then you see them lean in on the Zoom call and they say, what exactly is the channel anyway? But they understand that there's this recurring revenue model, this opportunity for them over time to hit that hockey stick. The other thing that you make me think about is the story that you were telling about sort of where we were and where we are makes me think of a sports analogy. And if you look at professional sports, historically, the coach that gets fired every 5 or 6 years is a really offensive minded coach. And then you see the pendulum swing pretty aggressively where that very offensive minded coach, let's choose basketball, gets them scoring 120 points a game. But because they're not playing defense, they end up losing 120 to 121. That coach gets fired, and then we hire the defensive minded coach for 5 years. So you talked about this big pendulum swing in the channel. It's not about relationships the same way that it was. It's a little bit more transactional. I believe whether private equity gets out of the industry or just doubles down, we're going to see an event, likely multiple events in the next 3 to 5 years. What do you think that does for the industry? If you had to take that crystal ball out, where do you see the industry going 3 to 5 years from now?
I actually think it's healthy to have some acquisitions and some combinations, because again, the best thing we can have is a robust channel that the industry and market buys from and supports. And so I've been accused in some of my past of not liking private equity. I don't think that's true at all. I think it actually validates how we function, and there's a place for that. The mistake I think we're making right now is I remember, and again, I'm biased towards Telarus a little bit because I spent more time there, but I remember spending time with Patrick Oborn, and he was so dialed into every agent and every experience, but he was also dialed into growing new agents. And as the combination of the acquisition of the entire industry, suppliers, sub agents, master agents, TSDs, whatever you want to call them today, we've forgotten to foster new relationships. We're doing some things with some non-traditional agents that are bringing people into the channel that have never been here before, and they're looking at it in a totally different light. One of our platform companies actually would be comparable to a VAR, but the difference is, instead of trying to change their business model, like I think Intellis has tried to do with their VAR program, it is more about melding them together and adding to it. And I think that the risk will become that it's all so consolidated that there's no new blood, and the suppliers have to get volume and performance, and so do the PE guys. And if the PE guys don't see growth, they will exit. They'll find a way out of it. And the worst thing we have happen is them pull the money out and leave, because now the banks don't trust you anymore and the customers don't trust you anymore. And so I think we've got to foster some new blood. We have to bring ways to facilitate growth in the channel. We have to bring new partners and agents into the business. And that has to look in a lot of different ways. If we're going to go through a recession at some point, usually a lot of the channel was created when people lost their jobs and all started their agencies, right? But that's one way. I hope that's not the way we do it. We're not tapped into colleges and tapped into youth and bring those in. So one of the things that one of our member companies does is we have an MSP security offering, and they run a capture the flag contest at all these universities. And then we hire the winners. We go in and hire the best security personnel to come in and staff our security operations from running a capture the flag contest. Those kind of things are what we have to do to facilitate growth. But I think the channel is going to continue to grow. I think that the TSDs will consolidate. I think that the suppliers will consolidate, and then we'll have the normal ebbs and flows. If you look at the big players, Blohm and Comcast, AT&T, they all ebb towards indirect sales and then ebb away a little bit more to direct sales, and then edgy, and that's a normal flow. But there's hundreds and hundreds of software companies launched every day that need a way to sell, and an indirect selling model is more efficient for them. I know you guys are advising a lot of those companies on how to get in. We have to lower the barrier to entry, niche the approach so they can find their customer base to grow into somebody that can actually take advantage of the robustness of the channel. And right now they're forced to enter at the top level and try to pay the entry fees of big organizations before they have the customer or even the infrastructure to support it. So we've got to have some niche entries into that to let them grow into suppliers that actually support what the TSDs and what the channels become. I think that's going to be the learning curves we have to figure out as an industry if we're going to be successful.
Yeah, great insight, Roger. That's the same thing we see. It takes so long to become profitable, takes so long to get into the channel, and the channel is becoming so expensive that there's a lot of people questioning, can we do this anymore? Can the channel be valid? And there's lots of ways of fixing that. One of the things you mentioned is, or we've seen in the channel, is this melding between the traditional telco channel and the MSP disty channel. I think back when when ScanSource bought Intelisys, we thought that there was going to be a huge storm. The whole thing's going to flow together. But I think relatively that has not happened. But you guys are doing some exciting things in that space where you're bringing those together. Why don't you share a little bit about us with the kind of the Novar and the Vendorsphere stuff you're doing?
So I was, you like to think you go into a business and you understand what you're trying to do, and then you get surprised. And I'm always willing to say I didn't know anything I was talking about. You guys know that. I'd make stuff up. Or Eric accused me of making stuff up on the fly before, and if you say it loud enough with enough confidence, people believe it. That's some truth. But the thing that I've learned that I wasn't expecting is the total lack of transparency. And the minute you apply transparency to a transaction, everything gets smoother. Enterprises are so siloed that you have to have more on-ramps than the channel provides them. So we go into these Fortune 50, Fortune 1000, whatever level you want to talk about, and they are still really, really siloed in different groups. There's one group that does procurement. There's another group that does TEMS. There's another group that does the delivery, and they don't talk. They're not allowed to talk. And so you have to connect them together. So the first thing one of the first plays we made is we started one of our member companies called Novar. And Novar is a play on the word VAR because it's kind of like joining a softball team and naming your team rained out. So when they look at the schedule, the other team sees that it's rained out and doesn't show up. But Novar is actually a VAR that specializes in commoditized commoditized IT hardware and software. So think anything you can buy through distribution. What we do is we go and provide transparency to that experience. So rather than asking an enterprise to go through the RFP process, which just guarantees 3 really, really well-written lies presented that they picked from, it actually provides full transparency in the way they purchase that commoditized software. Then we lower the margin on that commoditized equipment in exchange for becoming agent of record in some of the channel side of the business. And so we build a playbook to transition that over. And what happens is, as we've provided value, back in the 80s, Cisco came out with this model where they would get engineers certified. I would go buy some routers. I would make the pretty lights blink in my office. Then I would take it out to their office and make them work. And that value-added reseller portion was logistic, was real. It was tangible. Today, the same model exists, but often the router or switch, or whatever we're going to talk about, goes straight from the provider, Cisco in this case, to the customer, and the VAR never touches it. They never even look at it. It's deployed, but we're still using the same model to sell that with the same mystery margin built in. And when you provide transparency to that transaction, it gives you an on-ramp into an organization that allows you to go after different levels of service and eventually become the agent of record or engaged in those other SaaS type solutions. The other problem we have is we think that there's so many different, there was a study done by a SaaS stat group in 2009, and the average enterprise had 9 enterprise applications and 5 authorized purchasers. They did it in 2022, if I remember right. The average number of SaaS stacks inside of organizations was in the low 50s, and they had 30 buyers. Well, every time you add a vendor like that, there is a level of vendor debt that's introduced. I have to go manage that vendor. I have to go onboard that vendor. I have to go pay that bill. I have to go understand that recurring stream. And so Vendorsphere is a command center that talks to the different systems inside an enterprise and uses generative AI and large language modeling to normalize how you manage and select those vendors. And so what we've done is instead of, this is a criticism of the channel. I'm going to just take a minute and criticize it. When we launch new technologies in the channel, we often present them in a way that is impossible to use. I refer to it as an erector set. IoT was a good example of that. Here's an erector set. You have to go pick a piece of software to run it. You have to go pick some devices to deploy. You have to go pick some sensors, and good luck on making it all work together. The channel can't sell that. They need packaged solutions. And so Vendorsphere is a customer-facing enterprise platform that uses generative AI workflows to update whatever systems the enterprise are in. We're updating ServiceNow. We're updating Salesforce. We're updating Teams. But it's communicating how to manage and control that vendor debt that is so rampant that people don't even realize. Because IT used to be able to approve a vendor, and now they get surprised by shadow IT as it comes in because the marketing department bought it or whatever that might be. And so those two tools give us additional on-ramps into these enterprises that we are then able to use savings and playbooks to get more control of their spend, more control of that SaaS stack. That's what we want, is every recurring stream we can get. But we use pro services, and we use MSP services, and we use VAR services to actually get access to those. And that's what we're doing. That's quite different in that enterprise space.
How big a part of your business? So we've talked about AI as an industry for the better part of the last 12, maybe 18 months, but we've talked about it as something that we as agents, advisors, and suppliers can sell. You're using it for what seems like a very different methodology, for lack of a better term.
We don't even charge for it.
How big do you believe Vendorsphere, what I'll call your AI platform, correct me if I'm wrong, how big a part of your business is this going forward?
So it is going to be the answer to the question of how we produce value and how we drive behavior. For example, we have 5 buckets of overarching revenue that we go after. When a customer comes in and sees the scoreboard and understands the areas that we control and the areas that our partners and agents can control, they eagerly go to say, how do I get more of that fed in? We have an agent that runs through XCV. They've got a big enterprise customer. They are trying to go to ServiceNow, which is a very typical thing in the enterprise space. They have 14 platforms that have to be eventually moved over to ServiceNow. We're using Vendorsphere's automated generative workflows to update that from the beginning for 12 of them. They're going to punt the conversion of those 12 2 years down the road, because all of a sudden they don't have to worry about it anymore because we've automated using workflows that they can't see. They just don't care. So they're able to focus on their big spend, their big software spend, their big and then they get back to business. And so it's going to be a huge underlying piece, but we don't even talk about AI when we start the Vendorsphere conversation. We talk about the vendor debt that's introduced and the way you use large language modeling to interact with your data more and more. I'll tell you, we're doing a study right now where we pulled in a 7,000 page bill, summarized it, and found out that there was more than $10,000 of mistakes monthly over 3 months, each month. And so you go in and generate that. You don't have to charge for the AI. You have to understand how to automate the workflows that these enterprises are struggling with as they reduce staff, increase the vendor debt, and try to understand how to even use the channel. And before, we walk in, we're like, we want to sell you UCaaS, we want to sell you CCaaS, we want to sell you security, we want to sell you mobility. Enterprises aren't ready to buy those immediately. They've got to go figure out their workflows to get that done. So it's going to be the platform. I don't think it'll be the financial model. I think everybody will build that into in 2 years. AI is already in Salesforce. It's already in Microsoft. It's already in, I don't think you're going to sell a lot of AI personally. I think it's going to be embedded in everything we do. My Mac has AI built into it. My iPhone has AI built into it. It's just one of those things that's just going to happen. Just like the cloud became inevitable for software. There's been a new software release. An on-premise software company hasn't been started since 2008, I think. Right? It's just going to become natural. So, but people that don't know how to use it will fail. I believe that if you can't present the things you do, I always say this, the best gift you can give an employee or a customer is the right information at the right moment in time when they have to make the right decision. And when you have the ability to do that, you win every game. You make your employees better, you make your customers happier, your business runs smoother. And the best way to do that right now is with different versions than things like ChatGPT is not the answer. It's that generative AI automated workflow, using AI in the right way to do things in a completely different manner. So I think it's going to be the foundation of every business without it being the primary revenue of any business.
So it sounds like to me that AI will take over that Thames environment, make that 10 times easier. Everybody's going to have access to do this kind of Thames work without having to really pay or manage a Thames type company. Is that what you're saying?
So we did about, I want to say $5 or $6 million of Thames consulting last year alone, just in one of our groups. Enterprises hate their Thames systems. We're watching most of the TSDs buy a Thames. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but AptRec just bought VCOM, which is a mobility Thames. I know Bridgepoint owns a Thames. I believe Avant is buying a Thames, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not dropping those names because of any reason. I think they understand that that's one of the ways to get into the market. What will happen, though, is those Thames providers, which are really frustrating for enterprises right now. I can tell you horror stories about Thames products. But the Thames groups will use AI to improve their products. So the function of Thames is really about paying the bill the right way. The difference is we're going to, and we do this for our customers, so there'll be a Thames Lite or different analysis. But instead of trying to run an inventory that is the incomplete and trying to understand those bills, it will actually let us ask questions and then prompt to ask the right question. So when we drag a bill into Vendorsphere, it will say, do you understand that you're committing to this much recurring spend? Do you understand that your out clause is this? Do you understand how this site is going to run? And then later I can come back and say, let's say I'm going to have a QBR with one of my providers. Could you tell me how many outages I've had with this provider? And then when I go in and have that meeting, I sit down and say, Mr. Supplier, I've had 14 outages. 10 of them have been in my location in Texas. What are you going to do to correct that? Or why shouldn't I move to a new provider? And it changes the way, again, the right information at the right time to negotiate the right deal. So I think Thames are going to add AI, just like Salesforce added AI. It will just be a more optimized experience, if you ask me, and it'll take time.
So our typical listener is someone that sits in the channel. We get a lot of folks that are on the supplier side. So if you're speaking to a channel chief at one of the suppliers or a channel manager, someone in marketing, how can they support what it is that you're doing? And if they're all in on where a large language model and AI fit into the next iteration of the channel, how can they support you and or this initiative?
So great question. The thing we've learned about enterprises, it's really hard to get them to pivot out of certain technologies, whether it's their Thames software, whether it's ServiceNow, whether it's a SolarWinds monitoring platform, whether it's Teams or Twilio or Slack or whatever that is. What Vendorsphere does is we have an interface that they can use, but what we would rather do is connect with their interfaces that they already have. If you want to live in ServiceNow, let's update ServiceNow from all of your different systems. So as we plug Vendorsphere into different suppliers, we ask them to give us the hooks we need. And there's lots of different ways to do it. Simple hooks like webhooks, or even we can even parse emails and automate workflows, but true APIs in, but then don't get hung up on whose interface they use. Because if I live in Teams and I want to always get notified of everything in Teams, why not let the systems do their job and update the Teams platform the way that the customer wants to see it? And that's where they live and they know they're getting value from that. So that's first, is give us the access we need to do those integrations. But second, it's understanding that they have a very specific need in the enterprise with different variables that they address, and be willing to adjust to those variables. When you talk about new suppliers, often they think they're everything to everybody, or they have to be to do that. And the enterprise just doesn't work that way. We've got to bring them in, give them base hit wins, and then grow into that. The other thing I think they have to do is be realistic about what they can support. What is their target market? Some suppliers need to be on the TSD level. That is more of a SMB to mid-sized enterprise customer. They can't handle. We've had 4 suppliers since I've been here that we've tried to introduce to enterprise that have failed miserably because they don't understand the financial model. They don't understand the workflow. For example, we negotiated last month with one of our suppliers a volume contract for $8 million of annual spend, but it isn't applied to specific circuits, products, devices, phones, whatever that is. That comes later. Now, we haven't started to realize that $8 million of annualized spend because that happens next year and the year after, and we grow into that. And so suppliers have to understand that they're not going to have immediate, you think about, we brought these suppliers in, like it's not growing as fast as we thought we would. And what we said was, look, this customer has promised to spend $1 million and almost $1 million a month with you in 18 months. It'll get there. And if you don't, you get to charge the whole thing anyway. Get over yourself. And they're like, but my banker doesn't understand that. My CFO doesn't understand that. And it's been amazing that if you don't have the right level of understanding of how enterprise works, you'll struggle there. And so just being willing to listen and learn about where they fit in that space, I think it's a big deal.
So as you talk about these vendors, you're looking for somebody who could play in the enterprise space. As you talk about this, this all sounds like your kind of XCV platform. Is that correct? And if so, tell us a little bit about that piece now.
So when we started XCV, we thought that there was 85% of the channel that was served really, really well by the current TSDs. We thought there was the top 3 to 5% of the channel, maybe 10% of the channel, that really needed a different outcome. And the way we commoditized it, the way we profiled it was they didn't need the services that the TSDs were offering. They had their own engineers. They had their own client services team. They had their own client approach or management team. They often had software developers or pieces of the company that they had built that they wanted to monetize and commoditize. So they wanted to monetize their solutions, not piggyback on a TSD. And to do that, they felt that the overhead tax that was provided by the TSDs was too high, leaving 20 or 30% of my margin behind for services that we didn't use. Didn't match that model because they wanted to hire pastors, but they didn't want to do the supplier management. They didn't want to go do those pieces. That was what I thought was going to be the main driver. The TSD tax I thought was going to be what did it. It turns out that's a factor. Don't get me wrong. And I thought the second thing was they wanted a bigger share of their MDF. MDF, I had somebody call it the other day, institutional thuggery. It's purposely kind of confused and blurred and a mystery, so it cannot be moved around and shared correctly. So what we told our sellers is instead of using MDF to run events necessarily, what we would do is based on your sales book, the portion of MDF that we hand out is based on the person that sold that category the most. So if you're excellent at network, and we have a network supplier that wants to invest in the channel, we give them their share of the book is their share of the MDF. Again, we applied transparency. The transparency was the most important part. We still screw up the events just like everybody else. We still have not enough butts and seats, and we had a great golf tournament yesterday. We did things, but that mattered. We have an equity share component for our top ambassadors because while I didn't believe that the TSDs ever promised their partners equity, there was a revolt about that. There were some people out there that were upset that they helped grow the business. I actually don't think they did anything wrong. I don't think there was ever anything in the contract or every implication that the TSDs were obligated to share their equity. I don't think that ever happened. What was frustrating for those big partners was they didn't have a say in what happened to their book, and it became a point of risk. And then the fourth thing that I've really found that I didn't believe, this is another one of those that's never going to happen. The collaboration we have between our ambassador members has been remarkably open, sharing, and willing to share revenue. We had a member that hated a supplier and was ready to yank it out that was about $2 million of spend at their customer a year. We had another partner that loved that supplier, knew how to manage that supplier, knows how to work with that supplier, came in and they turned that $2 million into $4 million and did a revenue split. But they also took that supplier in and they became their contract vehicle. So this sharing of leads and this enterprise approach, there's so much money in it that the cooperation between ambassador members, I never saw it coming. I had no idea it could happen. I didn't believe it. And then when you pick the right suppliers, we ask our ambassador members to bring $1 million of opportunity to the rest of the ambassadors every year. We ask our suppliers to bring $1 million of opportunity to the ambassador members every year to be a priority supplier, a preferred supplier. what's happened is they're finding creative and unique ways. We have a couple of suppliers that have laid off a whole bunch of staff. They had a bunch of dormant accounts. They hand us the accounts. We have a program called XCV Activate. We hand those leads out to our ambassador members. Those ambassador members go call on those accounts to restore them. We have a 40% hit rate of those leads turning into revenue from one of those programs. So think about that. Ambassadors are coming in and saying, I get a share in these leads. I get a share in revenue I'm not good at. I get to monetize the services I've built that I want to make money at, and I don't have to pay for things I'm not using. And that cooperation has been the most refreshing thing I've seen since I joined Telarus, because I had so much fun in growing the idea of the channel. This is the most refreshing time I've had in my career, because my faith in humanity is being restored a little bit, that not everybody wants to participate in institutional thuggery. It's a fascinating microcosm in the channel that I don't think we see very often.
One of the things that I see a lot is suppliers struggling to figure out ways to work with the partners, which you call your ambassadors, right? I might make that association.
Our top tier is ambassador, yes.
Okay.
Right. Commit to certain activities. Uh-huh.
Okay, so suppliers really struggle being creative in the ways to find success with their partners. Talk to me on what you're seeing your suppliers doing with your ambassadors and other partners to generate revenue, generate interest, generate and kind of kick up that top line opportunity and revenue.
So the first thing we do is, again, we apply the transparency. So every dollar we spend in MDF, we give a report to the supplier and we give a report to the ambassadors. So everybody in the organization knows how money is being spent, which gives us the ability to evaluate that money and be creative on the way we use it. But what we are trying to move away from is, instead of trying to teach, by the way, I think this is a valuable part of the traditional TSD channel. Instead of teaching new sellers how to sell new products, we are taking the people that are best at selling a product and expanding their business in other customers from other members of Ambassador. But we're doing very unique things. We took one of our agents, top partners, to the Kentucky Derby. 2 years later, that CFO got handed procurement for a $250 million organization that now is sourcing it. It's a much longer sales cycle. We had another partner that tapped into the athletic program at his alma mater and is tapping into all the alma mater to his college, all the CEOs that came out of there, and he took them all to Pennsylvania, and they golfed on the golf course that they're having the U.S. Open at next year. Well, that MDF money is spent totally differently. That the suppliers have to see why it's going to that and then track that directly. We've decided that if we can't track $1 of investment in MDF to $1 of sales within 2 years, we should not ask for that money again. So we do not ask for a platform fee. We do not ask for generic money. We ask for things that are very specific activities. And then, like I said, XCV Activate is their dormant accounts. That is seen as MDF. They're handing us a group of billing customers that we get to go expand and grow on. That's an investment. Being willing to come in and they all can't do that because they can't provide leads. But I'm gonna tell a story about Ring Central and at Telarus. I'm not sure that there's any secret here, but when we started, I think 90%, if I remember right, of our sales in Ring Central were provided by leads from Ring Central. But they tracked it really, really close. And then in Q2, it went down a little bit. It was like 75%. By the end of the first year, it was kind of 50%. It tapered off at about 25% of our deals were leads from Ring Central, and then 75% were generated by our partner community. When I went to Ring Central and asked them for more MDF, they said, no problem. We'll write you a check tomorrow, but we're going to take your leads and give them to somebody else. And I said, no, please don't do that. You're a full level ambassador. You're the highest level of sponsorship. Keep giving us those leads. I think sometimes we get hung up on what those investments look like. And we've been totally creative on this. We have some traditional type of events, but we've done, like yesterday, we did a 12-person golf tournament. We had sellers there we had customers there, we had sellers there, and we had agent partners there. And what happened was a bunch of people met a bunch of new people, and they all got to be involved. And they all got to go sell new things, and we ended up with 5 or 6 leads out of 12 people. That's better than the hit rate a lot of industry events. So we just are being more. I think, but the number one thing is we're just transparent about how to do it. We ask for ideas, we come up with ideas, we go execute those ideas, and then full transparency lets us know if we should do it again. And I think that's the really missing piece.
XCV Activate seems to me like a great fit. If I'm a supplier trying to figure out if I fit into that model, there are so many suppliers right now that we talk to that are getting out of the direct model, which means they've now potentially have these orphaned accounts. And that's really who you want to talk to. So just in terms of kind of my aha moment, all of the suppliers out there that are looking to get out of the direct side and go all in on the channel, this is a prime opportunity. I think the thing we often forget, you use ReCentral as an option, so we'll stick with UCAS. When you bring even an existing RingCentral deal to an agent, to an advisor, there's so much more revenue. Cameron, you and I heard really at all the TSD events this year that the average agent is selling less than 2 products to a client, and the opportunity to sell 8 plus. Roger, you talked about it at the beginning of the show in terms of the applications that people are buying. So when you bring them an opportunity that's an existing customer of yours, if you're a supplier, sky's the limit on opportunity that they can go sell to that client.
You're exactly right. And often we get in the channel, we get a little arrogant about what we have. I'll give you a quick fun story. This is a huge deal. This is probably our 3rd largest deal that will happen next year. We have a selling agent that we've been trying to recruit. They haven't signed with us. That has a big customer. They have a nice deal. It's a UCAS deal. It's 6 figures. The company has had a lot of turnover and a lot of change, and we happen to have another selling partner that knows the new reporting structure better than that agent. We went to that partner and said, we'd like to joint sell this to you, because while you have this small pocket that matters to you, they have security problems, operational technology problems, and MSP type problems that you don't know about. In fact, we're about to have this other partner sell them more than $7 million of services and more than $25 million of recurring services that have nothing to do with what you're selling them, because it's a different group, a different department. We'd like to joint sell this with you. And the selling partner's answer was, no, thanks, I'm good. I think I know everything about this customer. The other partner gave that customer a $3 million discount on the services to make them the agent of record, and basically kicked out that other UCAS provider, limited their exposure, and landed a deal of UCAS 4 times as large as the new agent of record. And they could have participated in that. There's so many different ways to go into customers, and they did it with Novar. They sold them nearly $25 million worth of hardware at a 5% margin, so they saved money. They got paid by the suppliers for their commission, so they lowered their expense, and they were able to provide discounts in consulting. When you do that, you've got to understand how to play that. But you're right, the opportunities that exist when I have a dormant customer that is buying 9 circuits from me, I can go into that customer, refresh those circuits, but then sell them all the other things. I can turn a $1,000 a month customer into a $100,000 or $10,000 a month customer in a few short months if I know how to work the playbooks the right way. And I think that it's a huge advantage for both suppliers. Think about this. I know of at least 5 people today that got riffed in the last 2 weeks that I've talked to in the last 2 or 3 days, right? There's going to be some changes at the year end, like always happens. As we lay people off, offshore people, bring less channel managers to bear, there's, agents disappear. There's this dormant group of accounts at every supplier that can be handed to a group that will run the playbook the right way to expand and grow that. And we're having more success with that than I thought we would too, as we talk to additional suppliers we deal with. It's going to be a lot of fun to see where that goes.
So I'm going to ask the elephant in the room question. are you an option for people either looking to get into the trusted advisor space? We talked about getting new people, new blood, new bodies into this space. Are you an option for them or other folks looking for a new TSD?
So we provide the way you have to think about it differently though is, and I've said people stay home. If you want to use engineers that are part of your TSDs already to take you already taken out, we're not a good fit. If you want to come in and participate in a collective that you'll let those other members monetize the services they provide and allow you to monetize your services, absolutely. If you don't think you need the help from the TSDs and you're going to use the supplier's resources, we're a great option to increase pass-through and lower the what I call the TSD tax, because you're not really using those services. But when you need client management, engineering, and you're not willing to go trust and partner with another collective member, you probably should stay home where you're at. So we're focused more on big deals, but I will tell you where we are an option is leave all your business, commoditized business where it's at. But when you land that one enterprise customer, or you want to go up the food chain, our playbooks will get you there faster. We don't think you'll move all the business over. In fact, I don't think it's always the right thing to do. But you can't get into enterprise if you don't understand procurement. And we're the answer to that. Think of Novar as a supplier, just like any other supplier in the channel. Think of Vendorsphere as a supplier, just like any other supplier in the channel. Think of Calvary as the pro services supplier, just like any other supplier in the channel. The only way you can get to those solutions is through XCV. So that's why you need to sign up, is to get those pieces. And if that's all you ever sell through XCV, that becomes just fine. But if you want to grow into that MDF share, equity share, higher pass through, then come talk to us and we'll show you how you build up to that. From member to associate to ambassador is a very specific growth plan that we have for you. And when we started this, I love how Doug put this. There's 200 people at the top of the channel that we want to go after. 100 of them are jerks. We won't name them. The other 100 is what we're after, and 50 of those don't want to participate cooperatively. So we're looking for this 50 to 75 group of people that really want to work together in a unique way. And we're having a great time finding them and bringing them in and teaching them and growing it. And we've hit some major milestones in a short period of time. So we are an answer, though. If you're not happy with where you're at, you'd be amazed at the number of people have said to us, "You're spot on with what we're looking for. How do we get involved?" And then it's really muscle memory. I'll tell you, it's hard to move people over just because of habit. I place my orders there just because, like, we had one group, like, we would really like to move here, but our Salesforce automatically sends the order to this TSD, and we're like, well, let me hire a Salesforce developer. I'll come in and change that button, and then we'll fix this problem. So, but no, to answer the question, we are an answer. But I think it's a blended answer. Just to be totally blunt, totally frank.
Yeah, Roger, you've done a good job of talking the well-roundedness of the organization you're building and have over there. My guess is there was a question you wish we would have asked you that we didn't. What question is that, and what's your answer to it?
I always love that question. You've asked a lot of them. I think you nailed a lot of it. I think the real question is, are we going to get bought or sold? Mm. And there's a fear out there in the sellers we talk to, the strategists, whatever you want to call them. I know we like to call them partners, we like to call them strategists. At the end of the day, we're VARs or we're agents or we're consultants or whatever you want to be.
That is the biggest question I get when I have conversations with PE firms trying to understand the channel. They're like, help us with the vernaculars. There is like 20 names. What is what in this space?
It's funny because if you talk to certain TSDs, you have to call them strategists. If you talk to others, they're called partners. If you talk to another, they're called consultants. And then some people still slip back in, like I do, to agents, because I don't find anything offensive about an agent, but I know it's really, really offensive to a lot of people. So I apologize to all of you. It's kind of like Jets fans. I'm sorry, but we'll pull back from there. But the key thing we've done with XCV. So let me back up. the platform, the Caliber Holdings platform, we decided there's something happens. You're either a piece that you get bought and plugged into, or you're the platform that people buy things and plug things into. So we built Caliber Holdings to not exit, but rather have people come in and out of that platform. So that was number one. We wanted to be big enough that we didn't have to rely on private equity as much unless we wanted to. And so we did that. Is XCV for sale? No. Is it designed in a way that if it ever happens, it protects the members? Absolutely. Because the ambassadors get a share of that equity. The contracts pass through and they're protected. Our long-term plan is not to exit. Our long-term plan is to build up and bring in companies and expand the platform where we have pieces that exit, but our platform stays intact and as whole. And I think that that's one of the things that makes suppliers more comfortable and partners, agents, strategists, whatever you want to call them, more comfortable, is that they don't have to wonder what's going to happen. It's a longer term play and it's a bigger play. Now, I will never say that things aren't for sale, and I will never say that could never happen. But the way we've protected the members, the associate members, we think we've done a job answering that. I think that's not as understood. I don't think people are thinking when they place their business, they're placing their business for probably highest pass through or loyalty to some other factor. I love my channel manager. I like my engineer. I've always done it that way. They celebrated when I hit $1 million. They gave me a trip to Jamaica. They bought me a guitar. They bought me a surfboard, whatever those things are. But really, are they thinking about what's best for their business? And do they have a plan? And I know that those things are being addressed by the TSDs, but I think I will tell you that the founding member of XCV was Caliber Solutions, which is an agency. They asked for 4 things. Guarantee me you won't change my pass-through. Give me my share of MDF, and make sure that I have ability to move my book if who you sell out to doesn't meet my business model. And they offered 100% loyalty and exclusivity to every TSD that existed at the time, and all of those TSDs told them no. So they said, then I have to go start my own. I have to go find a way to address, because it's a risk vector in my business that I can't tolerate. I can't live. I'll back this up with one more thing. Since we started XCV, we have found more than 6 figures or 7 figures of commission mistakes that have just been paid for by systems that produce wrong from the very TSDs that have promised to make sure they get paid correctly. If they can't get paid correctly, they have to go find a way to get paid correctly. And I think that that's probably the question that we spend too little time talking about the security of your business. They're more worried about the exit of their business and how they're going to buy that revenue stream. I think maybe that's probably the question that we didn't talk enough about, is that idea of business security and longevity.
Well covered.
So all of your contact information and your organization's contact information will be in the show notes. But we introduced you about an hour ago as the godfather of dad jokes. So I would be remiss if I didn't put you on the spot for a dad joke as we wrap up today.
My 7-year-old granddaughter called me yesterday and said, "What did the horse say when it fell down?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "Help, I've fallen and I can't giddy up." And so that is probably, I have to honor my 7-year-old granddaughter, Serafina, for telling me that joke. But I don't know if that hits home or not, but that's probably the best one recently. So
that's a grandpa joke.
That's a total grandpa joke. See, when I was doing selfies with Roger, it was dad jokes. Now I'm a grandpa, so it's grandpa jokes. But I have multiple 6 and 7-year-olds call me every day to tell me jokes. My nieces, my cousins, and so anyway, that's my current favorite is "Help, I've fallen and I can't giddy up." So,
Roger, I love it. As always, it was a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show.
I love what you guys are doing. I think teaching the channel and growing the channel. I know you guys call yourself Channel 2.0. We talk about channel pi, which is 3.14 because it always changes. It never moves around. Whatever that looks like. I love the channel. I love the organizations. I love the success, and anything I can do to help anybody in the channel, I look forward to doing that. I know I've been a little maybe off the radar for some, according to Eric today, but I'm here. Come find me. I've got both my knees replaced. We're hiking to the top of, Base Camp Everest. We're doing lots of fun stuff this year. So come talk to us and let us give a pitch on what we're trying to do and help you make some money.